This is landing anywhere between 150 and 350,000, as a design fee. I don't know, what's your initial read or thought on where I stand right now and the best way for me to move this forward?
Hey, Growth Techs, that's our old friend Alexander Buckeridge, owner and founder of Studio Bucky, a design firm with commercial and residential work spanning the globe, which you'll hear about today. And yes, this is the same Alexander who just launched his firm during season 1 of the Growth Tech podcast. So in this episode, we're going to get an update on how Studio Bucky is doing and dive into different pricing strategies for a big potential project that Alexander has in the works. So tune in to hear how to value and price your services effectively so you can land the best clients at the best price. But before we begin, a huge thanks to Gelt for sponsoring Season 2. They've made managing my business and personal taxes stress-free, and I highly, highly, highly recommend that you check them out at joingelt.com. Plus, be sure to mention Growth Detect when you schedule a consultation to get 10% off your first year with Gelt. And if this is your first time listening to the Growth Tech podcast, here's the gist. There are somewhere around 30,000 architecture firm owners and leaders in the US today alone, but there's virtually no place for them to chat about the question that fuels their business. How do I find, attract, and win the best clients for my firm? So that's why I created this podcast, to tackle your real questions so you can walk away with actionable insights. And if you like the podcast, then you'll love The Studio, which is a private membership for architecture leaders with steps, strategies, and support to grow your business. And actually, everyone in Season 2 is a member, which you'll hear about at the end of the episode. If you want a taste of what's inside The Studio, then be sure to join my free newsletter at growthatect.com/join, where I share free sales and marketing growth hacks with more than 10,000 architecture leaders every Sunday morning. So go and join right now and enjoy the show. So we've got the one that you landed right first, right? That was starting construction soon. There's been a few small projects that have landed in between. There's something big coming up. You've got an accountant in place, which is great. Gelt sponsors Season 2 as well, just like they sponsored Season 1. So if you are looking for accounting services and tax optimization, I highly recommend looking into Gelt. But I'd love to understand, what's happening now. I know before we jumped on the call, you had mentioned, there's something else that might be happening. It's kind of in the works. What's happening with that situation?
So my first client that I started the retail store with, it's a family. And, things have gone very well. And so I think it was Monday, I guess we're Friday today, Monday, the client reached out with a floor plan and said that they were really concerned about this new project that they're working on, a personal home residential project. And so, I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but they were there then. I said, I'll take a look at it. And so we got on a call and she'd mentioned that, before in an email, she'd like me to potentially do this project. So I was like, okay, but I wasn't sure. And so I got on a call with the couple, the both of them, and we went through it and we looked at there's loose planning done for it, quite loose. But I had done some preparation for it, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, I got to the end of the call and, going through everything, it was their pain points, etc. They were just like, we want you to do it. We have someone on board. We don't, again, feel comfortable with them. We prefer to work with you. And obviously gone through a lot with the retail store in such a compact, timeline and intensity and had that many stakeholders. I think that this kind of came about, but it came about like it was never floated before. It just came into the inbox. Whilst I was trying so much CRM stuff, tracking everything, like this came out of nowhere, which is great. And it's great for everyone to be aware that these things happen, and it's just a surprise, it's just like, wow. And here we go. It's, this is like 3,500 square feet, brand new kind of high-end residential building. The Waldorf Astoria are building it, which is like a chain of these kind of very luxurious residential apartments. And so the idea is for me to come in and do the entire interior design service scope for this. It'll be given as a white box kind of shell and all that stuff. So I got off the call with the intent to sit down and understand the project, get all the information, chat to them, and then go back and figure out where to put my proposal together ultimately. So it's pretty it's a pretty large chunk of a project in terms of as far as interior design residential goes. It's high up there, you know.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so you you have one. You've kind of done the discovery call process, all right. And by the way, this didn't come out of nowhere. This came out. This is kind of exactly how it's supposed to happen. You've started already to build out that conversion engine, right? So you took someone that wasn't aware of who you were. You made them aware of who you were. You went them from aware to interested. Then they became a client. And then what happened? Those clients then became advocates for your business, and they want to keep coming back to you.
Yeah.
That's how it should work, right?
Yeah. That's right.
My guess is that's not going to be the only project that you get from them, and that's how you want it to be, right? It's like multi-level marketing, right? You want, like, every client should hopefully branch off and give you like 3 more, and then that they should branch off and give you 3 more, and that happens from doing your work really well, and also making sure that you're, maintaining those tight communications, opening up that feedback loop, staying top of mind with these people. So that's awesome. I mean, that's just you doing the right things, maybe not even realizing how well you were doing that.
Yeah, probably.
So next step for you then, are you in this, you're in the spot now where the next step is to create a proposal, come up with your pricing and your fee and present that to them?
I think so, because we've worked together,
Yeah.
we've already established a relationship together. So except, if there's particular snippets of information I need, I can sit with this now and go over it and run a live proposal together. I think that would probably, and you tell me, but I think putting together what I know, understanding of them, understanding of everything that's going on, and then having a follow-up call again and just taking them through my understanding, where things are landing, getting her comfortable with it. And yeah, I guess just kind of like getting into the negotiation part of it then after that,
Yeah, absolutely. So they have a site. They have a budget. Do they have a timeline?
Timeline is end of 26. Yeah, so
Okay.
there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's there's a nice
extensive.
bandwidth to it.
Yeah, that's great. So there's going to be some consistency out of here. So this is really important to your business. Like these long ones are great. I mean, short ones are nice because they're kind of like they're like nudges that you keep on getting along the way to keep the business moving forward. So that's great. But this is one of those pillars, right? This is kind of like a boulder project that you can hold to, and it's nice to have a few of those in the background as well, just kind of like always steadily running in place, and then you're sprinkling on top these other smaller ones. So that's great. So we've got like a foundational project that could be falling into place here.
Yeah, which is great, because there's been a lot of little boulders floating around, but this seems like a solid one, a rock for the studio. So I think in that regard that this is it felt like important. It felt like, well, okay, all this last 6 months, whatever, of just grinding and doing stuff that I felt like I was just getting about, just to make sure I got my name in the door. This is the kind of thing you're waiting for, is like that this lands in, and it's this, again, this project will probably, land anywhere between 5 and 7 million as a construction cost. So this is a significant jump up from what I've been previously working on.
Yes, at least alone. But I mean, you're familiar with this price range in general.
Yeah. From my previous jobs, this is pretty normal. But I from this for Studio Bucky's standpoint, this is the first like significant over 5 million project.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, that's awesome. I'm excited. So, what are you thinking?
So I'm crunching the numbers, and I'm going over kind of like the planning for what that would look like in the next 2 years if we were to start this, Q1 of next year. They have an architect. The building's architect is based in Miami, and so they need information sooner than later, which is plumbing, etc. So I may have to start this early next year, and so I'm kind of mapping out the phasing, mapping out what time I'm going to spend on it, all that stuff to kind of like come up together with an idea of what the cost could be, for my time, and basing it on 6 million as a construction cost.
Yeah.
I think this is where, and I'm in the process of figuring this out, so it's good to have this conversation. It's kind of, I don't know what the right step is next. Is it to go in all in on a very dialed in proposal? Is it to touch base again with a draft, let's say, a bit more informal and arrange? Because I know it's always good to get to where this is where I see this landing within this amount and this amount. Because in my head, and let's just, go through figures and whatnot, this is landing anywhere between 150 and 350,000, as a design fee. I think I've done some research on the market there. This is Denver, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but and obviously you personally have a lot of more experience in dealing with this kind of like you're seeing, maybe you're exposed to a bit more of the numbers in terms of with Monograph and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. What's your initial read or thought on where I stand right now and the best way for me to move this forward?
Yeah, I think here, let me ask you a few questions to get a better understanding. How that meeting that you just had, how did that end? Were there next steps set?
Yeah, next step was we want you to do this. We need to get an agreement in place. That's yeah. So it was quite
Okay,
clear
cool.
in that sense.
Was another meeting set, or was it just said that this is what's happening next?
What we said this week or next week, sorry, we would meet.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, small adjustment is just to make sure you get that in the books always, especially when it's
Wow,
moving
damn, I
like
forgot about
this
that one
fast.
actually.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a small deal because it sounds like they're pretty bought into it already.
I
So
see. I have touch points with them 2 or 3 times a week, which is interesting. On top of this,
yeah, I think, I don't know if you need a clarification meeting before you ask for their business again or ask for that signature. But I could see something like where, you reach out to them and say, hey, let's meet on Tuesday. On Monday, I'm going to send you a draft of my understanding of what you're looking for. If you can confirm that with me, then when we meet on Tuesday, we can walk through what this project looks like and talk about pricing as well. Like I would do it that way because I think, you're right that it could be like there's a little bit of risk just in how quickly this has come about and the fact you've had like one conversation and this is like a very long-term project. So I think you do want to confirm that you're understanding what they're talking about, but like just get them to confirm that kind of like in writing, I guess, to make sure. And then you can finalize like the pricing details. Now, if I were you, I would definitely this is definitely one that I would put together like a few different options, right? I'd have like 3 different pricing options for them, depending on how they want it to go, how involved they want you to be. If maybe they want an hourly, maybe they want a fixed fee option. But I think something to be really careful about with like these long-term ones is making sure that you don't lock yourself into a fee that can't be adjusted when things change. Because it's a 2-year long project, right? I mean, things are definitely going to change. So it's a different conversation than like, I'm gonna do a house and I've done 50 houses before, and so this is just gonna be like all the other homes, even if they are longer. So if you know that they're longer and it's this kind of like interior, fit out project, I would probably include like rate increases in that contract. Does that make sense?
yeah. This is interesting because
a fixed fee isn't bad, but if you're going to do it like for this one, I mean, maybe this is one of the options, right? So fixed fee isn't bad, but if you're going to do it for this, you want to make sure that you're leaving yourself a lot of padding and that you're very intentionally defining, what a revision is, all of those things that are included inside of the deliverables and these different things so that you're protected should a lot of changes come about. I think that's the most important thing with these long-term things because over 2 years, a lot's going to change. And that's not even like, that's not the client's fault. That's just like human nature, right? Things are going to happen. So many different things are going to happen. So for any fixed fee version of that, I think there wants to be a lot of padding on that one. And so maybe that is the highest priced option or something like that. It is more of a fixed fee. People know what they're paying. And you're also adding additional services into that, so that would be like, we'll meet every 2 weeks or something like that for an hour to confirm all of the progress that's being made. And, you'll get this many renderings always, or you can always walk through the project and I'll send you whatever the Enscape model or the Lumion model, right? So that you can walk through it always and make sure that you're getting these checks, and then maybe option 1 is more of an hourly model, maybe at least broken down, for specific phases, or it's like it's chunked out in different ways. But I think what's important, because this is the first one, right? This is the first potentially multi-year project. So I think this is an opportunity for you to establish a policy for your fees, right? And policies are great because, it's just the firm policy, which we'll talk about maybe another one later, which is like, making sure that you have a minimum fee for any project that you do, right? That's a firm policy that you want to get into place. So another one is like, every 6 months or every 12 months, we adjust our fees relative to inflation. We adjust our fees relative to value added. We adjust our fees relative to, this or that. And so, then it's like it's a standardized thing that no matter what, it falls into every contract for these projects that are going to be longer. Listen, no matter what, this is what we do. We always, fees are always increasing every 6 months or every 12 months, adjusting to the economy.
And that would be just baked into your contract as a line item.
Yeah, that would be, yeah. Adjustable rates essentially is what it is. But, increasing over time. So, if you're doing hourly and you're like, it's $2.50 an hour now, that goes up to $2.70 an hour, July 1st of 2025 or something like that.
No, that's helpful for this. It's because it's a new territory situation,
Yeah. So I think about it like that, but then, really the most important part about this is just making sure that you're mapping back the way that you're breaking down your pricing strategy back to what their priorities are, right? That's really the most important thing. So I don't know what came up like in the discovery process, but if I asked you right now, with this new home, what's their top priority? What would you say?
I'd say top priority is functionality because they see this as a place that they're going to retire.
Okay, cool. So functionality is going to be their top priority in this new space. I'm trying to think of like what that means about like psychoanalysis of them, right? So if they want the space to be super functional, does that mean they want it to be like really adaptable? Is that kind of
they want it to work very well for them and be circulation. It's kind of the flow, the choice of material. It's foreseeing for the next 20 years, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it comes with it. Yeah, that's very important. I think just efficiency with the space. I think they're unhappy with someone who laid it out previously. It didn't seem good. There's a few things I have noted that they want, and they just want it to feel they collect art. They're into that. They want it to feel like a unique space, and it's an investment. So that would be another one, is that they do see this as an investment after that to be sold or whatnot.
Yes. Okay, got it. I mean, so then I would map, you map everything back to that experience that they want. So whenever I'm doing pricing options, I always like to make like a really obvious no, in a sense.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes that's the high one. Sometimes that's the low one. Sounds like for you, maybe it would actually make sense for this one to be the low one. Maybe that's the hourly fee one. And, they don't walk through material samples. Instead of meeting once every 2 weeks, you're meeting like once every 2 months or once a quarter or something like that. Or you're just giving them like an async breakdown at the end of every single month, in terms of progress and different things that are happening in the project. Versus, that high one is like we were saying. So if they are thinking about this in terms of, retirement and space and being highly functional, then this is probably going to be a space that they do want to experience before it actually gets built in some way, right? So, the high-end one, you get digital walkthroughs whenever you want. Actually, that model is live and updated, and you can walk through it at any moment you want to. We'll meet every 2 weeks to make sure that you're getting updates, and that'll be a 1 hour like live call. Construction administration is involved in that process. You're going to be stopping in once a month. You'll fly in or something during the construction phase to check in and make sure everything's going well. And so I guess that's how I would think about it. And then I guess the middle package is falling somewhere in between there. Maybe that one is the mix of, maybe there's a mix of hourly and fixed fee into that one. There's a middle ground between, how much exposure they're able to get to the space before it gets built and goes into those different efforts. And I think that's how I'd break it down. And maybe even also in the top tier, like the ability to, feel and experience those material samples could be a big one. If they're going to be exploring a lot of materials versus, the bottom one is like, they're just confirming it like on a computer screen.
Yeah, and furniture selection and whatnot's going to be
That's
huge.
Right. Yeah,
and
we've talked about that actually. Yeah, so maybe that's a potential upsell for you, I would think, right? Like,
Well, here, this is where this conversation branches to as well. Is what
yeah.
is the upsell? What are the additional items that are potentially packaged with this?
I mean, for you, upsell is definitely like custom furniture, would it not be? I mean, that's like
100% would be.
yeah. And I think, the timing of where that lands to me is, it kind of depends on what your relationship is with them, because upsells, sometimes they're great to do right at this moment. Hey, you're signing the contract. Here's the a la carte version of everything else that you could add to this if you want, like a customized kitchen island or, a custom, living room sofa or something like that, and different coffee tables. Like here's some additions that you can make. Or that's something that gets added, later on, and introduced, when you're further into the project and you've had more opportunity to prove your value in these different things that you can do. And if it is plan B, like if it is option B that you're talking about, like, hey, like it's something that you'll upsell later on once we're further into the project, I do think it's important to be, clear and upfront about that. Like, hey, this is what this is. I do have some other ideas for ways that we can, customize and add additional value if that's something you'd be interested in. But let's get into the project first, and then when it makes sense, we can add it. We can discuss what that would look like if you wanted to do it. It's just something like that, so that when, in 3 months you're like, yeah, well, we could do this customized furniture and this would be an additional fee. They're not like, what are you talking about? Like, when it comes to running a successful architecture firm, taxes play a huge role in your financial strategy. Even if you've already filed, being proactive this year can significantly lower your future liabilities. And now that I'm working with Gelt, I finally feel like I have a partner I can trust to handle everything from my business to my personal taxes, and I'm excited to collaborate them for this season of Growth Attack. Think of Gelt as the ultimate CPA for firm owners. Their tech platform provides personalized guidance to help maximize deductions, tax credits, and savings. Plus, their in-house team of expert CPAs offers tailored tax strategies designed to minimize risk and grow your wealth. And when I first onboarded with Gelt, they shared strategies that saved me tens of thousands of dollars. So if you're ready for a premium, proactive strategy to optimize your firm's financial health, you have to check out Gelt. Go to joingelt.com and mention Growth Attack so you get 10% off your first year with Gelt.
Do you have any thoughts on this subscription model for this kind of a project? It's not as flexible, so you'd have to be willing to revisit that probably within 6 months, if not less. Just as I'm trying to, as we're looking at all the options here.
Like a subscription model, you're saying? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like when I'm saying like, fixing it at, let's say, 10 or 7K a month, and where do you see there's obviously benefits in terms of cash flow and consistency, but there's probably your downfalls too.
Yeah, the downfall of the subscription model to me is that like they could jump off at any point and kind of do the same thing that you're about to do with whoever they're working with right now, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm not happy with it, so it's easier to jump off of a subscription model at a certain point. So I think that's the risk that you run. But yeah, the benefits are that you get consistent cash flow. I'd say the standard like architecture version of a subscription model, right, is just invoicing every single month.
Yeah, so breaking it out in that regard and just having
breaking it out in that regard. Yeah. And also like when you share the timeline with them, like they get an idea and saying, well, at a minimum, I'm going to be putting whatever, 20 hours a month into this.
Yeah.
And so, expect roughly whatever that is.
And maybe it's more that kind of, it's a scheduling conversation around payments.
Yeah, I think it's the pricing schedule. Like that could be
okay. That's yeah.
I would think about it. I would think about it more that way, because then that gets them to commit to the long-term project. I think subscription models are more helpful for people that need more one-offs. Actually, like a subscription model in my mind would be perfect for those commercial clients that you already have. Maybe you've already helped them, right? And you say, hey, for whatever it is, for $2,000 a month, you can be on me, and I'm always ready to produce at least, or to design at least one new piece of furniture for you, as you're looking to expand or grow into different areas like of the office. It's like I would think of it as something like that, not so much with like the larger projects where it's like, do you want to subscribe to me so I can work with you?
Yeah, no. I think the pricing, like the scheduling, is a better. It's just the positioning of it that feels better. And so in terms of like, let's say the hourly, and then you're looking at like a kind of a fixed, I'd say more so you try and do most of it out. Like say for to break this into your traditional phases, your concept, your schematic design, your design development, would you say in the hourly situation, you just pare it back and say, I'm doing parts of this hourly? I'm just thinking in terms of, or is it more you're just positioning it as it's this many months, I'm going to put in 20 hours or whatever per phase? What's the best way to position that? It's obviously you want to show this is the lower option. Let's say option A is your kind of like low commitment, lower, whatever you want to call it. It's like your lower,
low commitment.
Lower commitment. Are we saying that that's like, let's say we're dealing with a range of 150 to 300 grand. Do we say that it's hourly, but it's capped? It's capped at this per. How do you sell that one? Is because you read
like a not to exceed.
Yeah, because I mean,
I don't know if you want it. Like there is a point of this where you want to optimize for whatever option you want them to choose. And by the way, that option is not always like the highest option. Actually, there was a discussion in the studio about that. We were talking about different pricing options, and someone was like, "Well, I made like a high price tier, but I was hoping that they didn't choose it because I actually didn't want to commit to everything that I was putting on that highest pricing option."
Yeah.
Which is true. So it's not, sometimes you do want people to fall in the middle, and that seems like the obvious option. So I think for you, one, I would decide which option do you want someone to choose, right? And then I design the options almost in a way to reflect that. That doesn't mean that they're always going to choose that. They might still choose like something outside of it. But like if we're talking about clients here where price might not be as much of an issue, then maybe it's just about the different pricing options, right? Because it's like known versus unknown. Like the fixed fee option, whatever, maybe that one is $350,000 and it's just broken down over 24 months, and that's what they're going to pay every single month for the next 24 months to get that. It's known that that's what's going to happen. There's a ton more things included in the deliverables and in the experience that they're going to get, but they know exactly what they're going to pay, right? So that's kind of a benefit that they get out of the fixed fee model. The hourly, they might not know, right? So it's like pick your poison. Like, which one do you want? Do you want to know? Do you want to know exactly what you're going to pay, and this is a price not to exceed, assuming that nothing changes within these bounds? Or would you rather, risk it a little bit? We can go down the hourly route, and we're both secure, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah. And I think if you're tiering these options again, you have that option where it's the lighter touch, isn't it? It's like it's the less renderings. It's not the walkthrough, the being on site. And so I think within that, you position that as that first one, and you probably put the hourly on it as well, because you're not as boots on the ground in the project. But the all roads for me are leading to obviously the option C here. So I have to really dial in what's included in that, what's all the services that will be involved, making it very clear. And let's see. I mean, you can obviously do a hybrid where you can do a bit of hourly at the front end of the project stages, the back end.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that might be necessary depending on, again, because of the pace of this project, because you just learned about it, maybe that concept phase is always hourly. And I think this is where every single architect should kind of think about where they feel most comfortable, what's most consistent, right? Because the way that I tend to think about hourly versus fixed is like, I only want to do fixed when I can provide a ton of padding and know that I'm safe and protected from what's happening, or when I'm just really comfortable and confident in what these projects do, right? Like I know and I have confidence based on my past experience and a lot of historical data to know that roughly pretty much 99% of projects fall within this range, and this is how this is going to go, right? And if you don't have that, then I think inserting hourly where that isn't the case is helpful because it helps to protect you. It's not necessarily as ideal for the client in a sense, because I think clients just always want to know.
They do.
They just want the known, right?
Yeah.
And I don't blame them.
No, I don't either.
I wouldn't want to pay someone hourly. So I think that's where you can
push towards.
Yeah, you can.
Push and let's bear in mind, I've kind of gone through this process with them on the retail store, so I have a sense of if I reflect back on that. They didn't want to do hourly, but again, there's no problem. There's no point in. There's still, I can put that on the table, and I think the mix or the further end option will be where it lands.
Yeah, and it could also be like almost like an amortization, like of the price over time, where it's actually increasing or decreasing, whatever their fee is increasing or decreasing over time. Starts lower, moves up higher as you get more involved in the project or as the project gets closer to the end.
Which could be more, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to put something together that feels like, again, your light, medium, full engagement kind of services thing. And
yeah, but just remember, we had talked about this in one of the episodes when we were talking about negotiation, right? So as you're going into this and you're putting together these different pricing options, one, I would go in. I think pricing options are always going to be better because hopefully they're choosing how to work with you rather than whether or not to work with you. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be any negotiation.
Oh, of course. I'm expecting that, to be honest.
Right. So I'd go in. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was going to say I'd go into that expecting negotiation.
Yeah.
And before going into that, I would take some time to write down what their priorities are so that you understand how to leverage like against that, right? For the negotiation. Oh, you want like a lower fee? Well, that's fine, but we won't be able to meet as often, or you actually won't have access to that live. Like we can remove that, but there's no access to the live model at that point, right? It's like, pulling almost the highest value things if they start to negotiate. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that would be helpful as they get into the. Because one thing that I'm sure with reoccurring clients, I'm sure people have gone through this, where your first project with them, you were lowballed, right? You were brought in for your 30K, whatever, 25K. And now we're discussing a contract that's potentially 250K. That's X, whatever, that's X, So, you've kind of be prepared for that because it's going to be a significant change. And that conversation probably will have to happen as well, where it's like, oh, but God, this is a real jump up from your last one. But the reality is I guess as you prepare for that is that this was only meant to be a 3-month project. This is a 24-month.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
this is a different scale.
If you take that 3-month project and you assume that it was 24, it's actually probably the same. Like,
exactly. So
I'm
back in my mind, I'm thinking through those kind of variables.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, just make sure that I think the most important thing early on for these isn't necessarily you have enough projects now where you have some stability. This would be a really great foundational piece to have, but still make sure that you're protecting yourself, right, against that low fee, because I would argue that it would probably actually be more painful to your business to accept this project for a lower fee than what is reasonable, right? Because then you're locked into something like that for 2 years, and you're not going to enjoy that. Like, but if you get what it is, then you're more involved with it, you're more invested in it, and then you're actually really close to being I'd say you're like halfway to the point where you could potentially like hire on full-time help somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, this signing at the figure that I feel is right. I think I will be exploring. Like, there'd be a lot of production to be done on this.
And I think a good benchmark for that, by the way, is at a minimum, I like to see around $150,000 revenue per full-time employee, right? So if you had yourself and then 2 part-time people, right, then ideally you'd like to be around $300K a year at a minimum, right? I think once you get to $200,000 revenue per full-time employee, like you're doing well. Like that's definitely like the top tier of architects. And I've even seen like actually, with a monograph, we see some firms that are even, we've seen 400.
Say there's 600, right?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at, we did the benchmarks report earlier this year, and everything's anonymized, but there were some firms that were, they were above 400.
We've got, I'm on that course with a few people that are in the 400. So that's pretty impressive.
Which is a great thing. But I think as you're starting to grow, right, 150 as a baseline for that full-time employee, and then maybe even with a path or an understanding of where that 200 could come out of would be helpful. But for you, I would try to think, okay, how can I get the business to $300,000 a year, and that kind of frees up that ability then to have 2 part-time workers or 1 other full-time worker helping you, at least at that point.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it just allows me to feel a bit more comfortable with monthly accounting fees and all that stuff as well. It's it's allowing me to structure everything else better and put a bit more time, put a bit more capital behind other things in the business, which is exciting. I feel like now is I've got all these different ideas of how to build out things, and possibly getting people on different tasks to do them in the studio would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, investing back into your business, speaking from experience, like that's not something that I did very well when I was running my own practice. Now that I'm running Growth Detect, I do it clockwork, and it feels so much better. Like the business just is so much healthier and so much more sustainable because I know that I'm putting revenue back into it, and so that it's going to continue to grow and
you're seeing it grow, and you're seeing it evolve in a real way.
And that's really hard when you're in this middle phase. That's really hard when you're trying to pay yourself at the same time that you're trying to invest into the business. You need a significant amount there. So you're in the hardest phase. I would argue that jump from 1 to 2 is actually harder than 1 to 10 or something, or 2 to 10. 2 to 10 is going to be easier than 1 to 2.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because like even right now, it's like when you start bringing in, some cash flow, it's like I haven't even got to the stage where I figured out paying myself a salary. It's like, but I had some good advice from the accountant. Was like, once we hit the 70-80 mark, then the wheels really start moving a little bit. We're going to have to start pulling, we're going to start having to pull out a separate account, get you paid, set up that system. We're going to have to do profit first model, all that stuff, which is very good. No, it's all great.
The S-Corp and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. All that stuff's there. So, but when you're floating between 20 and 50, I guess, probably, it's still not unsure. It's still not clear what to do there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean,
it don't look like nothing. Like you just I guess the money just stays
almost
there.
Like nothing. It's like savings. It's a bit like savings, and you're just working through things. So that's going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to. It's like getting to do all the stuff with the business.
Yeah. Well, it's been great to have you jump back in, and I know that since the end of season 1, you were actually one of the first people to jump into the studio. Which I really appreciate. But how has your experience in studio been so far? And what would you say to other architects that are thinking about or considering?
Yeah. It's been really great, actually. It's like as I was going through some stuff earlier this week, I was back in visiting some of the hacks, and here's a good one for you. I actually did a content matrix yesterday. And I came up with 39 different topics for the next 2 months, whatever it is. I think it's 2 months.
Yes. I love it. That makes me so happy. That's exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
that's actually, we're doing a growth workshop on Tuesday. That's going to be that. It's going to be around content creation, using that content matrix. So that's funny.
It's, it's great because you can kind of like, when depending what stage your business is at or what your focus is for that week or that month, you're able to just jump in and find the right information and start to create things. And then, I've now just need to block out half a day and go like create that content, a day for creating the content, a day for scheduling it. But once it's done, it's done. So it's been great to have that tool to be able to allow me to come up with just different ideas, because you have what was helpful for me is I have teams I'm interested in with the business. And when you apply that across different, like a list, that versus that, all that, it's really helpful. So yeah, that's a good example, I think, of this week of what I've got from it. And it's great to see more people joining it. It's great to have monthly conversations, talks, workshops. I found the tax conversation really helpful, and that was like doubled up with I'd already been getting into tax stuff. And just understanding when you are a business owner, what are the advantages and the disadvantages of running the business from a financial point of view.
Yeah, and those get so much easier the more that you hear. Like, you just need to be around it. Like, if someone would have asked me about taxes or to have a financial conversation, like, 6 months into running my design studio 3 years ago, or whatever that was, I don't know, it's been a long time now, 5 years ago maybe, I'd been like, I don't know what you're talking about. Now I feel a little bit more comfortable. Like, I'm okay having tax conversations and talking about tax optimization because I've just like heard it enough at this point where it's like, okay, I think I can see it apply now. But
and it's hard, again, I think everyone's becoming more aware and more, all that, it's really important to have that proper structure in place. And it can be quite overwhelming, the coding system you use, how you you distribute, how you log everything. But I think once you have a good system in place, it's great.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being in the studio for sure, and being one of the first people, and engaging and sharing your journey and your wins and all these awesome things that are happening. So it's definitely inspiring for people. For Growth Execs, I know that they all love season 1 and they're going to be excited to hear from you in season 2. But I'm glad that everything is continuing to grow and you're about to land your biggest project yet. So thanks for jumping in again.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. It's always good to touch base, and it seems to be when we get together, there's a significant growth spurt, which is kind of about to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking forward to the next one and seeing where it goes.
All right, thank you so much for being a growth architect and listening in on this actionable episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can continue to learn exactly how to overcome the business challenges that every architect faces. And if you want a taste of what's inside the studio, then go to growthdetect.com/join to subscribe to the Growth Detect newsletter read by more than 10,000 architecture leaders every Sunday morning. I'll see you in the next episode.